you do not understand white supremacy, what it is, and how it works, everything else that you do understand will confuse you. In all of these 9 areas of activity, economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. Anywhere on the planet, minute by minute, day by day, all of the time, all of the time, all of the time.
Good morning and welcome to the CRCS, also called the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Poppy, and we thank you for tuning in and listening to today's program. Today being November the 11th, 2022. Thank you. To get in contact with today's show, the usuals or the regulars know the numbers, but for those who are new to the program, simply dial 516-453-9921. Now, you can listen to the show there if you'd like, or if you have a question about something that Mr. Fuller says, then just push the number 1 button, and when you do, you will get in line and make sure that you give a call screener your name so that I could properly introduce you. Now, if you are a new caller to the program, all you have to do is when you get in contact with the call screener, make sure you tell the call screener that you are a new caller, and they let me know, so we give you the new caller alert so that you can be, I won't say expedited, but you will be heard. So you don't have to worry about that. Don't be scared. Just be brief in whatever you have to say. If it's a question, fine. Or if it's a comment, fine. Please do not go into a lengthy quote or disclosure or something like that. Don't do that. Just make it short and sweet so that Mr. Fuller can understand what you're saying and possibly answer your questions. And don't be surprised if you hear sometimes, I don't know. That's all part of it. Actually, it's all good. So you don't even worry about that. All right. Now, the second thing you can do, if you do have a question, you can also Gmail me at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, at gmail.com, and I will get that. And when I do, now it probably will not be read today. However, at some point in time, it will be read. I have a few on deck here, but it just depends on the flow of the show if those will be read. But your questions will be read, so don't worry about that. Just submit them, and then I will give you the time or alert you when they will be read, so you don't have to worry about that. And lastly, we have a chat room available, and all you have to do is go to blogtalkradio.com. And when you get in there, you want to make sure that you go to shows, the Produce Justice show. So you punch into that, and then what will come up is a screen where you can select and pick the chat room or select the chat room, and you can get in there and get all the latest what's going on in the chat, the conversations, and all. So that's the ways that you can get into the show. Okay, now all the books are in, and you will hear that today. Mr. Fuller will talk about his books and any other pertinent information. All the books and all the pertinent information concerning producing justice will be at producejustice.com. That's at producejustice.com. And you can get all the books and materials and whatever have you, upcoming announcements, past shows, you can get on that. And when we get the announcement of Mr. Fuller being on the Carl Nelson show, we will announce that. whenever that comes. And you can get that on our website at producejustice.com when that comes up. Robert and the team have set up a special link so that you don't have any problems getting all that information. Okay, I think that's it. Yeah, that's it. Okay, now let's do this. I think I'm done. Anyway, if not, just don't even worry about that. Okay, now let me present to some and introduce to others Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr. And Mr. Fuller, good morning, and how are you this day?
Good morning. I'm still learning.
You are still learning. Okay, now we start off our segment with Mr. Fuller, and it is called The Thoughts and Expressions on the Mind of Neely Fuller, Jr. Mr. Fuller, what are your thoughts or expressions this day?
They're still about what people want. And I think that's what the election is about. And it's all about what people want. What we don't have is enough focus and enough clarity. This is my opinion. These are my thoughts. And what people want. You can't get a problem solved, and most people say they have problems. So we don't have enough focus, two things, focus and clarity about what everybody wants. Now, in a broad way, talking about codification, I have concluded that people want three things, basically, in a broad sense. They want fun, they want glory, and they want material comfort. But this doesn't go farther enough into detail. In order for people to have clarity and understanding and reduce conflict, because we got a lot of conflict, that's something that many people say they don't want. They're sick and tired of conflict, sick and tired of people being angry, people falling out about this and falling out about that. And it's because we don't have what you call constructive communications. Because constructive communications about what? About what people want and what they don't want. And so we have to, in order to get these things in the realm of clarity and focus, we have to do what? Logically speaking, ask questions. Lots of people are saying lots of things. People are very willing to talk. But when we talk, try to have focus and clarity. Focus and clarity about what? About what people want. And if the list of what they want is long enough, they don't have to say anything about what they don't want, because that will be included in to what they say they do want. And so what are some of the basic questions that can be asked, particularly black people, first of all, with themselves as individuals, and be honest with yourself, because sometimes people hide things from themselves rather, about what they want and what they don't want. They'll give some cliche. Well, I want to be happy. Well, that's fine. That's a want. So you can say that. But be happy by doing what? So you have to go into details so that you at least have your mind straight about what you want.
This changes
because
everything.
Whatever you basically want, you'll do just about anything to get it. That's why it's extremely important in interchanges with white people and non-white people, white people and black people. For us at this time, us meaning all people on the planet, to make it very, 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 very razor sharp clear about what we want and have that apply to each and every individual person. Because not all people want the same things or want it the same way or in the same form. And, of course, within that wanting, you're eliminating the things that you don't want. But you can phrase the question any way you want to. That's a want. How to talk. How to communicate in a manner that will get what? The results that you want. But then you have to think about the things that you want. Should you want them? That's why a lot of people will not say what they really want. Because they think that they will get a reaction of, oh, what you want, nobody should want. You want to be a thug. That's what you really want. But if that's what you want, that's what you should say. You want to do harm to people for your benefit. That's what a thug is. But that's just not a word that doesn't have a meaning. Thug life. You want to be a thug, which means you want to do harm to people. Anybody you can do harm to. That'll get you what you want, something else that you want. First of all, you want to be a thug in order to get what you want, which means you're willing to harm people to get what you want. So let's go straight to what you want. You say, well, I want money. So one fast way to get some money, fast, is be a thug. And so you're willing to harm people in order to get what you want. And what are you going to do with the money? See, so if the money is just a vehicle for getting something else, unless you just like to stack up money and look at it and die with all that stacks of money. You got plenty of it all stacked up, but you never move the money. Most people want money, and they want it to move, the money to move from one place to another, from themselves to somebody else, in order to get something else. So the main thing is find out what a person wants, even when they have money, because they're going to use the money to get something else. And so if the person lists it, and then they say how they intend to get it. So here are the questions. What do you want me to do? Now this is something that will solve the race problem real fast. Because black people talk past white people. We're talking in a code in such a manner, and that's why we need a code that has clarity and focus. We go to meetings and all like that, but nobody is saying and telling the truth what they really want. We go all around what we really want, what we're there for. And we say, well, we're trying to solve problems. But in order to solve problems, you've got to be very clear about what each individual that's going to be involved in the problem solving really wants. Everybody's got to tell the truth about what they want. White people have to do it, and the non-white people have to do it. But all the diplomats and everybody, they talk in vague language. They go to all these huge meetings, and everybody will talk for 10 hours. But nobody is saying and telling the truth about what they really want. So every now and then, when you find somebody out of 1,000 people in a room, or 10,000, you find somebody who will come to the mic and say, what I really want is, and enumerate it. That's why I'm here. I really want this, number one. Number two. Now it's just a matter of us working because that's why we're here, to get what I want. And if what I want is going to inconvenience you, you tell me, and you should tell me, well, what you want is going to do harm to me. So let me tell you what I want. I don't want you to do harm to me. See, and that's the way everybody should talk, without shouting and getting angry. Then when you find out what everybody wants and what they don't want, because when they tell you what they do want, everything else is going to come out, like what everybody does not want. And we're not honest about that at all, nowhere on the planet. The people make it very clear. And when a few people make it very clear about what they want and why they want it, because that should be the next question. What do you want me to do? Why do you want me to do that? How do you plan for me to do that? And what do you expect the constructive result to be? Now, that's that add-on. Nobody wants to get to that last question, because you want what you want, whether it's constructive or not. But that should be very clear. You got to include that fourth question. What do you expect the constructive result to be if I do what you want me to do? Because usually when you talk to somebody, you want something. When a male talks to a female, he wants something. Hey, baby, don't you want to talk to me? Well, sure. But talk to you about what? Why do you want me to talk to you? And after he says the reason, he wants her to talk to him. The next question is, how do you plan for me to do that? Well, I mean, for you to stop whatever you're doing and talk to me. That's my plan. Okay. So let's go to the fourth question. What do you expect the constructive result to be if I do, like stopping and talking to you, what you want me to do? And that's a question that'll stump a whole lot of people all over the world, not just a one-on-one between a male and a female. But when everybody talks, that fourth question, that's the dynamite question. If I get involved with you, and each one of us lets the other know what you want by interacting with me, what do you expect the constructive result to be of me talking to you about anything, ever? And both parties should be able to answer that question honestly. But most people are afraid to do that. I mean, to the end of being terrified of getting to that fourth question. Oh, they'll breeze through. Because everybody, oh man, they're ready to talk about what they want. Oh, sure. But that fourth question, what do you expect the constructive result to be? Well, that's what's on my mind today. Whether it's on this program and throughout the entire world, because elections are supposed to be about what people want. But people got to do something that they very seldom do, if ever. Be honest, both black people and white people, and black people with each other. Be honest about what you want in every conversation, because you got a reason for making contact with anybody. And everybody that you make contact with should know exactly why you're making that contact. stop trying to fool ourselves and fool everybody else. That's where all of the problems come from, every last one of them.
Okay. All righty. That's on the mind of Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr. this morning. Let's do this. Let's go with Nicole this morning. Get ready, Nicole. Nicole in Maryland. Make sure, by the way, that person in the 716 prefix, please give the call screener your name so that I can introduce you properly. Nicole, you are on with Mr. Fuller. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Bobby. Good morning, Mr. Fuller. I'm glad I chimed in today because thug in the arena that I come from mean trying hard, understanding God. I just think that I'm glad Mr. Fuller brought that up today on the important day of election because it's a lot of people that I grew up with that I changed my life and changed their life that we were fighting hard or fight the truth of saying where is the Community Redevelopment Act money going? Why is that not helping people to better their communities and not to shine on thugs, Mr. Fuller, because I respect you through the teachings of Dr. Wilson. However, it's not a lot of thugs that's just out here thugging. It is valid reason why they're doing the things that they're doing. I mean, people is getting tired of what you just stated, that people not telling the truth. You come in our communities, we vote, and then people still not getting the truth of what they think they're voting for. For an example, something that's on legislation floor now is that they making an empathy bill mixed with a conviction bill. And that is they saying that people from 9/11, women and children haven't gotten compensation for the 9/11, which seems like that's not true these many years later. And then they tacked on a bill called the Prosecutors Act, which is asking for more convictions. But you're erasing limited resources in community to cause people to a certain degree that want to do right to not be able to do right. So I'm not glorifying, again, thugs because it's a different type of thugs these days. But, I mean, I don't think black people was the first thugs. There was a lot of Italian senators and other people that were selling drugs and doing things and still getting glorified in the political arena. So I just hope that that me, per se, the organization that I'm forming, is able to make that change in the neighborhood to educate people of relics as yourself or Dr. Wilson that was teaching people the essence of who they are and what they are. I'm just grateful that over 20 years ago I was educated on that. And in Kansas City, and I in here, so I won't take a long time, that, you know, they were really fighting for people to have jobs at Harley Davidson, General Motors, that came out of jail that was selling drugs and doing wrong. And then that was destroyed. So it's kind of like, you know, it caused people to go back into destroying neighborhoods or thugging. And with that, I end there.
Okay. Thank you very much, Nicole. Okay, let's see here. Remember, please, everybody, we only have a 2-hour window, so please, if you're going to make a comment, please make that comment short and concise because we only have a 2-hour window. Please, ma'am, please, sir, would you do that for me? Corey in Milwaukee, you are next. Thank you, Ryan from Buffalo, for putting your name in there for me. All right, Corey, you're on.
Greetings, Mr. Bobby and Mr. Fuller. Mr. Fuller, I had a white woman come up to me and tell me the following. She said she knows what it is to be a victim of racism because she's female, overweight, and has blonde hair. She went on to say she is not racist because she only has sexual intercourse with black males. Mr. Fuller, can you explain how behaviors like this should actually increase the suspicion that the person may be a racist and why?
Well, the person is a racist, but that's what they're doing because that's how the system works. Now, she may have not been the person that invented racism, but in the system of racism, if a white woman has sexual intercourse with a black person, a white person, male or female, has sexual intercourse with a non-white person in the system of white supremacy is being promoted. Why? Because it's white supremacy. And that this further promotes the system of white supremacy. That's the effect. That's why you always want to know, what's the result? What's the result of that activity? White people having sexual intercourse with non-white people in the system of white supremacy. Well, that's master taking advantage of the slave. That's all. And you might say, well, yeah, but they love each other. It's master taking advantage of the slave. That's what it is. You have to get rid of the system of white supremacy. Then it's even Steven, to use a cliche term. That's why you have to understand what white supremacy is and how it works in all areas of activity. And coming down to that want, evidently that's a want that this white woman has. But when you get to that fourth question, under wants, that's talked about on page 171, 172 of the textbook for victims of white supremacy, under wants, does it produce a constructive result? The answer is no. Why? Why is it no? Because it makes the system of white supremacy stronger, not weaker. And you're supposed to be in the business of making white supremacy weaker and replacing it with the system of justice, which means guaranteeing that no one is mistreated and guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help. Well, sexual intercourse between white people and non-white people in the system of white supremacy means that the non-white person is not getting constructive help. That's automatic. It ain't personal, it's business. It's just the way it works. You have to get rid of the system of white supremacy first. Then you can sit down to the table and start saying, talking about the merits of sexual intercourse between white and non-white, but not in the system of white supremacy, because you're not going to get a constructive result, no matter how you shake it up and pour it. It doesn't work that way. The non-white person is being taken advantage of. It's like the warden having sexual intercourse with the prisoner. That doesn't benefit the prisoner, even though it may look that way on the surface. No. The prisoner has to not be a prisoner. It's got to be equal first. Then the sexual intercourse. Sexual intercourse should always be between equals, so that one is not subordinate to the other. I hope that logic gets through. That's logic. That's not Neely Fuller. Neely Fuller is just looking for logic, and that's the conclusion I came to. I thought at one time the more sexual intercourse between white and non-white in this situation, the better. That would solve the problem. So sexual intercourse is really up close and personal. But then over the years I said, no, you have to straighten out the economics and all like that. That doesn't even work between a black male and a black female when they're not equals. Mm-hmm. It does not work. When, he has all the say and she can't say nothing back and all like that. No. That's not a relationship. Relationships or between, in order to be quality, means one person has just as much say as the other. It's got to be that way. And that's in any transaction. And sexual intercourse is a transaction. I hope that answers the question.
Okay. Thank you, Corey. Thank you very much. Okay, let's take a break here. You are listening to the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr., and we are so happy that you are with us this day. Now, to get in contact again with the show, call 516-453-9921. And if you have a question or a comment, and please, ma'am, please, sir, please make it brief. Just push the number 1 button, and you will get in line. And when a call screener comes on, just give them your name, and so that I can properly and hopefully properly, whatever, introduce you without making a mistake or butchering up your name. Okay. You can also Gmail me at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, at gmail.com. You can do that. And you can also join the chat room. All you have to do is go to blogtalkradio.com. Then you want to click on programs, and then or shows, and you want to the Produce Justice program. Click on that, and then the chat room becomes available to you, and you can do your thing in there and get the comments that are going on in there. And one of the comments, as a matter of fact, that is going on right now, is about Kyrie Irving. On that book that is put out on Amazon's platform, which was, I think it's Hebrew to Negro, has been put out on that platform, and there's been a lot of discussions about that, and I'm going to ask Mr. Fuller about that in just a few moments. But some of the conversations that have gone in there, and then on the sidebar, somebody wanted to know about the Dred Scott decision and what Supreme Court Judge Roger Taney had to say, about that, which, by the way, is still going on. In the code book, in the Word Guide, Mr. Fuller calls it, they refined racism. Yeah, check that out. That's in there, too, which, as a matter of fact, if you want to get the code book, and certainly recommend that you do, at ProduceJustice.com, there's a lot of terms that are in there that will be and have been used on this program and will continually be used on the program. That's why you need a code, a word guide, a code to let you know what words means and what's being said. I'm sure when you got your automobile, they put a book in there called Owner's Manual, and you pick that up and you read that owner's manual, or you're supposed to anyway. I think you are, to understand how to operate that vehicle, especially now with all these computer chips in there. But anyway, this is what this book is for, and Mr. Fuller will talk more about that at ProduceJustice.com. That's ProduceJustice.com. Okay, Mr. Fuller, let me see here before we move on here. I notice that a lot of people are always mentioning about your military time. People are just really, our callers and listeners are so interested in that. And Jay asked a question about that. And here was the question. It says, hello, Mr. Fuller. While performing the duty of a soldier during the Korean War, did you ever shoot anyone?
No.
Okay. There you go, Jay. Mr. Fuller answered your question. No is the answer. He never shot anyone. Okay, moving on. Let's go to Buffalo, where Ryan is there. Ryan, let me see if I can get you in here. Okay, go ahead, Ryan.
Hello, Mr. Bobby. Hello, Mr. Fuller. Hello, Compensation Warriors. Real quick, Mr. Fuller, Mr. Bobby was just talking about your military experience. Can you please break down when you were in the military and you had time away from the distractions? Can you, or are you able to describe the process of gathering the correct information to start understanding white supremacy?
I was on a radar site when I was in the Air Force. I wasn't in the Army. At that time, I was in the Air Force. After I'd been in the Army and got out of the Army and went into the Air Force. 4 years after I got out of the Army, I was on a radar site in Japan. And it was what you call a hardship post, meaning usually people stayed overseas for 2 years, or at least beyond 1 year. But it was limited to 1 year on my assignment because it was considered to be, quote, unquote, a hardship post. Hardship because you're isolated. And so we were way up in the mountains on a radar site. You had plenty of time to think because it was what most people would call a boring situation, almost like being in jail. That's why they put people in jail, so they'd be bored all the time. Their mind is just about useless. So just like in the movie Shawshank Redemption, they say you kind of keep your mind active as you most possibly can. So I started thinking about the race issue. I had a whole year to think about it. So I thought about it that whole year. I never had that kind of time before to think about anything where there are no distractions. You can just think. I think that's why people become monks. They go away hermits so they can do a lot of thinking. Because when you're not around a whole lot of other people and doing this and doing that and running here and running there, and everything is just quiet, and on this radar installation, everything was, for the most part, extremely quiet, deathly quiet. We were way up in the mountains. I was looking down on the clouds. We were up so high. And I was in a supply room where I worked alone when I was assigned to that particular area. And so I had plenty of time to think. So when you have time to think and you use that time to solve problems, you most likely will solve problems or come up with ideas for solving problems. So I, during that time, spent just about all of my time thinking about the race problem. And that's when I started writing the first notes that later on became a book about how to deal with the race problem. And that's the answer, I think.
Okay. All righty, Ryan in Buffalo, thank you for...
Thank you, Mr. Fuller. Thank you, Mr. Bobby.
You are welcome, sir. Thank you so much. Mr. Fuller, again, hot topic in the chat room right now is about Kyrie Irving. I can't assume anything, but are you aware of the alleged comments or the situation concerning Mr. Kyrie Irving?
Mr. who?
Kyrie Irving, the Brooklyn Nets basketball player.
I heard something about a basketball player who's in hot water of some type, quote unquote, slang term.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. One of the things that he made supposedly some anti-Semitic accounts on a book. or a movie that he had read. The book or movie is From Hebrew to Negro, and a company called Amazon put this out. And one of the things that I discovered in just looking at this is that some of the people that are making the comments have not even read the book. So they're making comments about Mr. Irving on something that they haven't read. They haven't read this, and some of the people who he supposedly offended have not read it either. And is this a usual practice by the white supremacists and by sometimes some of us as black people to criticize somebody without getting into the details of what the controversy is?
Well, I'll just say what the code says. If you're trying to solve a problem, you become totally familiar with what the problem is. So first of all, like any investigator talking about a crime in a criminal situation, law enforcement, you get all the details first before you say anything. You make an investigation of who did what and what the effect of it was. Then you go back and try to find out, was the effect constructive? Was it legal? But the main thing is, was it constructive? Was it something that should have been done or should not have been done, and why? You ask all the necessary questions first before you make any comment or any suggestion about what should be done.
Or shouldn't.
What was done, who did it, should it have been done?
Yes.
That's the main question. But you first get all the details about what was done. Or it could have been something that should have been done and wasn't done. And you'll find that out. But you got to investigate to the nth degree before you make any suggestion about how to correct something.
Ask questions.
So I hope that answers that part of the question.
Well, it did. It follows what you always say. Ask questions and more questions.
Ask questions. If you ask enough questions, it'll always take everybody right where everybody should be. And I repeat this over and over again. It won't take everybody where they want to be, but it's guaranteed to take everybody who's involved in the discussion. It's going to take them right where they should be. That's where that's the magic of questions and answers.
Yes, sir.
But if you start making a whole lot of comments and passing judgments and whatnot, and you haven't answered all of the necessary questions, or you haven't raised all of the necessary questions, then what you have is maximum confusion. And out of confusion, somebody's going to get hurt that shouldn't get hurt.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Exactly.
That's just the logic of it. So get all necessary details. Find out what all the words mean. That's getting right to code now.
It sure is.
Every word that everybody's using, every word, don't skip by nothing, has to be explained in detail before you make a move of any kind. Passing judgment. Oh, yeah, you find out what words mean. Words mean things. So that nobody's wondering, well, what exactly does this word mean? Any word that you're using. What exactly does this word mean? And you might spend 50 days talking about that word alone. Just that one word.
Yeah. Yes, sir. I can see the logic.
10 years.
Yes, sir.
Until all of the questions are answered about what that word means. Otherwise, the word should not be used.
Yes, sir.
So that's the first order of business. That'll keep everybody busy for a little while right there.
Right there,
what
yes,
I'm
sir.
saying right now. And everything in this controversy, in the discussion, find out what every word means before you start passing any kind of judgment on anybody. Start talking about what's right and what's wrong before you finally get to those words. What's constructive and what's not, and why.
Yes, sir.
But you've got to get the words straight.
Yeah. Yes, sir. I think what bothered me in my discovery, because I'm asking questions, is it seems like to me this word keeps coming up in my mind that he's being used as a distraction. Distraction of what? Well, I don't know. But the way that it's been put out in forefront, and he's supposed to make some apologies and all that kind of stuff for all the things that he allegedly was said and all that kind of thing. And it made me think, well, what about what you have done and have not apologized for? But you're making this man doing that. In the chat room, they mentioned the word public lynching. And then that just, I don't know, just led me to maybe some of this has to go with something you say in your book, the refinement stage of racism. And since we are there, go ahead and speak about your book before we go to the next question.
Well, the book talks about just that one thing, replacing the system of white supremacy, that's the focus part, with the system of justice. And it says on the back of the book, and people who have the book, if they get lost, they can always start off with what does it say on the back of the book, okay? And it says something like justice is better than racism. And it says you can't solve any major problem among the people of this planet here in the year 2022. If you're talking about any major problem between people, period, you're going to have to solve the race problem first, according to what I've written. Now, that's either true or false, but it says, I think that's what it says here, number 2, no major problem that exists between the people of the known universe can be eliminated until racism is eliminated. So I don't care what major problem you're talking about. If you're not talking about eliminating the system of white supremacy, because that's what racism is, and replacing it with the system of justice, you're really not talking about solving any problem between people. It's going to be a mess. I don't care what you do or how you go at it. If you're having any argument about what people are doing, period, arguments about male-female relationships, arguments about religion, arguments about economics, you're not going to straighten any one of those problems out if you're not talking about solving the race problem first or in the process of. That is a guarantee. So whatever people are talking about, you at any kind of meeting and all like that, you can just stop the clock right there and say, wait a minute, does this have anything to do with solving the race problem? Solving the problem of white supremacy and replacing it with justice? And the people said, no, don't have nothing to do with that. Where'd that come from? Well, then you're not trying to solve any problem between people. All of you. I don't care what it is. Male-female relationships, raising a family, the economic situation. I'm wasting my time sitting in here. Now, you can say that, and you'll be telling the truth. I don't care what they're arguing about. Law enforcement. How many people got killed in what city last night? If you're not in the process of solving the race problem, you're not going to solve that problem. Forget that. hey, you might as well leave that meeting right now and go somewhere and get some sleep so you can think better, clear your head. Because you got led to the incorrect place. They're not trying to solve nothing. If it has anything to do with people, if you're not trying to solve the race problem, you're not trying to solve anything, period, that has anything to do with the people called planet Earth. And that's a flat-out statement. And it's either true or false.
Mm-hmm. So you can get the book.
Yeah, you can get the book by going to producejustice.com. If you have any kind of personal problem or anything, you say, well, what has that got to do with my personal problems? Everything. If you're on this planet called Earth, solving the race problem, yes. Yes. Go and get the textbook for victims of white supremacy by going to producejustice.com. And we'll start making, I believe, some progress. Because you're not going to make any without doing something that has to do with replacing the system of white supremacy with the system of justice. You're just grabbing at air, and the air ain't even there.
Ain't even there. All right, producejustice.com is where you can get the book and many other materials. Okay, Mr. Fuller, let's go here to the Gmails. This comes from, let's see here, Scientific Negro says this, Mr. Fuller, I am a 30-year-old black male, which places me in the, quote, millennial generation, millennial, end of quote, generation. There are a lot of black males and females my age earning exceptional wages well above the average median income. Mr. Fuller, is this a result of, quote, racial showcasing, end of quote, or is it the result of blacks slowly becoming smarter?
Both.
Explanation, please.
Because we're still in the system of white supremacy. The white supremacists decide what a smart black person is and assigns that black person to whatever the assignment is going to be. The white supremacists, that's what white supremacy means. There isn't a black person on this planet who has a job that doesn't have that job because of the white supremacists. That has that job. Let me get this straight in my mind. This black person has that job, has that position, has those titles because of the white supremacists. That's what white supremacy means. In any area of activity, a black person who is well-versed in economics, how did that black person get to be well-versed in economics? That's a question that has an answer. How did that black person get to be well-versed in the science of economics, the use of time and energy, which is basic logical economics? How you use your time, how to use your energy. How did that black person? Well, this black person was born in Cape Town, South Africa, and this black person worked himself up. I mean, you know, he's a real brain, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Who dominates the affairs of what goes on here in 2022 of what goes on in what is called Cape Town, South Africa? Who dominates? Who decides, makes the major decisions about what happens there and what doesn't happen there in economics, in education, in entertainment, in labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war? Who dominates in 2022? And an investigation will show, where people are honest and tell the truth about what the investigation shows, the white supremacists. That's what white supremacy means. It means white supreme over all non-white people on planet Earth in 2022. Otherwise, it's not white supremacy. So in answer to the question, you see black people doing anything. I don't care what it is, robbing a bank or sitting behind a desk making millions of dollars, punching buttons. The white supremacists authorized it, or that black person is not going to be doing it. Period. Now, that statement I made is either true or false.
Exactly. All righty. Well, we can get the book by going to producejustice.com, and we need that book. No question about that. Okay, here. Let's see here. Let's do this. Okay, let me make sure I gave him that answer. Okay. All righty. That was from the Scientific Negro. Okay, Mr. Fuller, I'll tell you what we're going to do before we go head on here. We have about 3 minutes left in the first hour. So what I'm going to do before we commence with the second hour is I'm going to give you the last 3 minutes to discuss or talk about anything you want to do for a couple of minutes here before we move on.
Well, I'm going to end up on this hour like I started out, talking about wants. What do you want me to do? That's when you're interacting with someone else. So anywhere on the planet where you are, particularly black people among white people, on the job, anywhere else, just settle down, calm yourself so that you don't go to any extreme one way or another. They always talk about the angry black person or the black person who is just subdued and given up. But this is the way to be in order to make, quote, unquote, the most constructive moves, or we call it progress. It has to do with wants. First question, what do you, whomever you're talking to, what do you want me? Second question, why do you want me to do that? That what? That whatever it is you said you wanted me to do. Number 3, how do you plan for me to do it? Now, a person is telling you they want you to do something, they should have a plan for you doing it. They'll give you the answer, all right, or they should. You'll always get an answer to a question, even if the answer is silent. See, so there's no such thing as an unanswered question. Once you put that question out there, that's the magic of questions. You're going to get an answer, even if the answer is silent. That's an answer, okay? And number 4, the most important question. Of course, all of them are important, but you can ask them. You can remember these in that sequence. 4th question, what do you expect the constructive result to be if I do what you want me to do? And don't interfere with the answers that you get. Don't break into, when the person is trying to talk about the answer, don't break into what they're saying. You already know what you know. You want their answer, not your answer.
Yes.
Because everybody has a tendency to do that. I have a tendency to do that every now and then. But don't interfere. Once you put a question mark behind what you're asking, stay silent. Until the person says, I'm through answering that question. Next question.
Okay.
The person that you're talking to is supposed to give you the next question.
All righty. Well, that's going to conclude the first hour of the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller. If you have to go, we'll say bye for now. Hopefully, we will see you next week. But if you're going to stick and stay and don't go away, the second hour of the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller will commence in 5 seconds. All righty, welcome back to the second hour of the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. Let me see that I forgot to say to the first hour people that we thank you for listening. We thank you for listening. And speaking about thanking you, we thank for you for being in contact with the second hour of the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. If you want to get in contact with the show, you can by calling 516-453-9921. And when you do, just give the call screener your name so that I can properly give you an introduction. And then you can ask your question. Please, ma'am, please, sir, please be brief so that it can be answered in a good fashion, okay? That's not the word, but anyway, a good fashion. A timely manner. There you go. You can also by the way, and if you are going to be a first-time caller, make sure you tell the call screener that you are a first-time caller, okay? And what will happen is you will get a promotion. In other words, you will be heard. So you don't have to be scared. Just ask. And again, please be brief with that and ask your question so that Mr. Fuller can answer your question. You can also Gmail me at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, at gmail.com. Now, that question may not be answered today, but it will be answered as I have and am doing today on some Gmails from the past. So it will be, we have the time to do it today, so we're going to do that. And you can also get into the chat room by going to blogtalkradio.com. And then you want to click on, you want to go to programs, and then you get to the Produce Justice show. Click on that, and then you can enter into the chat. And there's some good information in there, good topics that will be discussed. Yes, and you'll be very happy about that. So we will commence with this show. And just on a note here for somebody in the show, John, and you know who I'm speaking about in the chat, the straw man does exist. However, you will hear controversy back and forth about that it does or it doesn't. But you have to do your research on it. And the information I gave you, I have researched it, and I'm still researching it. And it is true, but I'm trying to access it. But, again, they don't want you to know this, so guess what? See, that Black Lives Matter is more than a slogan. But anyway, we'll go on for that. Okay. Let me do this. Wait a minute. I had you on here, and then you went off the screen. Okay, well, that's okay. That happens. Okay, now my other screen has gone dark here. Okay. Let's see if I can do this. Okay, let's see. Right here. Okay, Black Speak. Okay. Okay, here you go. Mr. Fuller, this is from Black Speak. Let me see, make sure. Yes, Black Speak. Says this, Mr. Fuller, I don't see any reference in the word guide to diversity. Could you please explain, or what is the compensatory definition of the word diversity? Best regards.
I don't know, because I don't use it.
Black Speak. I'm sorry?
Oh, wait a minute. I didn't wait until you finished.
Oh, okay.
No. What's that question now?
It says, could you, it says, I don't see any reference in the word guide to diversity. Could you please ask Mr. Fuller what the compensatory definition of the word diversity means? The compensatory. So evidently, more than what we've been told by some of the dictionaries out there, Webster's or whoever has come up with that, but he specifically wanted to know the compensatory, the made-up word, since compensatory means to make up, replace the refined definition of the word diversity, or compensatory definition of the word diversity.
If it's not in the word guide, it's because most likely it's because I didn't think of it at the time, or I didn't see a need for explaining a word that is already popular for people to use. Mm-hmm. Now, here's what the code does say about words that are not in the word guide. Whenever a person uses a word without explaining what the meaning of the word is, you ask that person to explain what the meaning of that word is. Compensatory, counter-racist word guide procedure. See, there's thousands of words that are not in the word guide. All right, because there's a lot of words in the English language. The English language consists of so many words that if you're going to get them all, including a lot of the slang terms, you would probably need something that I have seen in libraries, a dictionary that had to be rolled around on a cart. It was so big. But the word guide is just a compensatory word guide that I have put out, and don't expect it to contain but a very, 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 very small number of words in the English language. That's why I call it a guide, not a dictionary. A dictionary will carry a substantial number of words, and an omnibus dictionary will have them all, and that's quite a task for anybody to do because words are invented every day by somebody somewhere, and these words find their way into what they're called a lexicon. And they have people who are supposed to be lexicon experts who find out what words, new words, are appearing. At one time, for example, there was no such thing as the word hip-hop, but somebody invented that word. People invent words. That's how they come into being. And people who study words, lexicographers, they call them, I understand, they go around and see what these new words are and what they are supposed to mean. And then the lexicographers, who are people who study the use of words and the inventions of words, are the people who select words that will go into dictionaries. So, let's get back to the word diversity. Remember, the procedure for finding out, if you don't see it in my book, and even if you do see it in my book, always ask. If anybody uses the word diversity to me, the procedure is, according to the code, for Neely Fuller to ask that person who is using the word, sir, ma'am, would you explain what you mean? What you mean, not what somebody else means, but what you mean when you use the term diversity. And like I said, when you ask a question, don't break into the answer. sit back and wait for the person to complete the answer before you speak. Because you should have, and when you speak, you should have another question. And if you don't have another question, well, you don't have another question.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All righty.
Can't get lost. That's the codified procedure.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
No. You're good.
No, that's it.
Oh, okay. Let me see here. I'm trying to find out about your. Okay, I'll put it. Okay, here you go. This comes from Tremaine, Mr. Fuller. Daryl, Darnell, see, you're off the screen again. Call back and tell the call screener you were on, and then you were off, and then we'll get you back on here. Mr. Fuller, this comes from Tremaine. He says, I have two very quick questions in regards to the so-called, quote, coming together, end of quote. I've been doing some research about the Black Panther Party. My first question is, Mr. Fuller, can you remember how it was living in the times of the Black Panther Party?
Can I remember that time?
That's what he says. Can you remember how it was living in the times of the Black Panther Party?
I was in the system of white supremacy, and I have met members of the Black Panther Party, and that's what I remember. And I remember the time.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That was your question.
All right.
I hope that answers the question.
No, that was
yes.
the first question. That was the first question.
Oh, another question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So you're finished with the first answer then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Here's the second question. It says, before I found out about your works, Mr. Fuller, I assumed that we as prisoners of war needed to unify and, quote, come together, end of quote. But as your book states, the United Independent Compensatory Code, can you please explain why group efforts don't work in a system in a white supremacist state? Thank you very much, Trey.
Well, I say in the code book, there are two ways that people can approach solving basic ways, and it's in the textbook for victims of white supremacy, to approach, or you might say, interact with, or think about, or whatever phrase you want to use, to solve, to approach this, to solve the race problem. Open air, which is what I advocate, and what I call full wall. Now, the full wall is you have leaders and spokespersons that are, you might call, elected or selected by people who are in, quote, unquote, an organization, meaning you have regular meeting places and you have a title for the organization, like the NAACP, like the Black Panther Party, like all of the titles that you may hear that has to do with formal organizations, collecting dues from the members. Soliciting donations. This is the four-wall procedure, traditional procedure, somewhat structured like many churches. The church has a pastor and an assistant pastor. That's under Christianity. Sometimes the structure is that way. But usually they have a regular meeting place that consists of a building or several buildings or several dozen buildings under the same organizational name where people meet regularly and they appoint different people to different positions, and they have what you might call a hierarchy. Now that's the four-wall approach. The one that I advocate, these are approaches to, quote unquote, to solving the race problem, is the open air. That is, each person, rather than be a member of an organization, each person organizes him or herself so that that person becomes an organization. It's one person. That's why it's called the United Independent System.
Mm-hmm.
And that person, you don't have four walls. You don't have a regular meeting place. You don't have membership. You are the member. You are the whole thing in one. You are an organization in one. And you have one thing. You're not looking to see what somebody else is doing except just in passing while you're doing what you're doing. And what you're doing is following a code. You're not following a person. You're not following a committee. You're not following, having what you call regular elections where you have people be spokesperson. You are the spokesperson. You are the meeting place. You are everything. Now, I believe in that system. United independent. You're united with your goal. That's what you have, your unity. You don't unite with people. You unite with a code that will lead to your goal. And you have that with you at all times, wherever you happen to be. Your meeting place is wherever you are. That's a different concept altogether. You're not on the phone trying to contact people that you know by name and say, we. It's always me. Me. I don't have any contacts except the contact that I make with a code. That's the only contact that I have. Everybody else is just a person that is either doing what they're doing or they are doing what somebody else told them to do or something like that. They have a leader. Before they make a move, they check with their leaders or their committee and all that. The four-wall concept, which is what the United Independent Compensatory System is all about, is that you are the center of the universe. And if it gets done, you are the person who's going to do it. That's why I tell people, what is my goal? My goal is to solve the race problem. They say, well, ain't you going to form an organization? So I am an organization. Neely Fuller is supposed to solve the race problem. You say, well, man, in other words, you're saying one person. I said, that's exactly what I'm saying. Suppose every person says, I'm going to follow an organization where I give orders to other people. No, I'm going to be the organization. I'm going to give orders to myself, and I'm going to accomplish the objective. Now, that's putting a whole lot on yourself, but that's exactly the way black people should be thinking here in 2022, according to my opinion.
Yes, sir.
Open air, four wall. I am open air, meaning universal. Anywhere I go, I'm working on the race problem, and I'm an organization. They say, where's your organization? And they say, you're looking at it. Sure,
Okay.
ma'am, if I'm in Italy. Well, I mean, where's your committee and whatnot? I am the committee.
Yes, sir.
I'm the whole thing, all right?
Gotcha.
They can take that any way they want to, but that's how I'm putting it out.
Okay, thank you. All right, we got Darnell back. Get ready, Darnell, because I'm getting ready to move over to the screen for you. And by the way, that person in the prefix 252, please give the call screener your name so that I can give you the proper introduction. Okay, Darnell, here we go. You are on with Mr. Fuller. Wait a minute. Yeah, there you go. You're on with Mr. Fuller. What is your question? Darnell? Okay, I see the usual suspects are at play again. It's all right. Not a problem. It's just par for the course. Okay, now this one, I don't know your name because it's not up on the screen, but let me see if I can get you in without any trouble here. Let me see. Okay, you're on with Mr. James. Oh, yeah, James. Okay, James, go ahead. Hello, James? Let me see here. Oh, this is great. Oh, yeah. Let's see. Nothing is working here. Wait a minute. Okay. How about this one? Okay, James, here you go. James from North Carolina. All right, James, go ahead. Oh, that's funny. You must have been hitting on some truth today, Mr. Fuller, because now can't get nobody in here. That is not a good thing, but that's all right. I don't know what to tell you, James, but to keep on trying because I'm pushing all my buttons here, and nothing is working. Let me see here one more time here. This show must go on. Okay, it's buffering there. Okay, can you hear me, James? Because I can't hear you. Okay, okay, how about that? All right, anyway, we'll move on, and I don't know what's going on. Maybe some technical problems, but those that know how the show works know that the usual suspects are in play. Anyway, here's a question from my Gmail, Mr. Fuller. This is from Gary. He says, Mr. Fuller, what do you think about corporations like Amazon and Pepsi, for example, investing in so-called black businesses?
Well, I don't think of corporations in the traditional sense. I say the corporation, just one corporation that really counts. That's the system of white supremacy. That's the term for it, according to counter-racist code.
Mm-hmm.
The system of white supremacy. People can break it down like they see fit to do it, but my recommendation, according to the code, is it's just one government on the planet worthy of the title government, and it's just one corporation. And the name of that corporation is the system of white supremacy. The name of that government is the system of white supremacy. And it's an evil system.
Mm-hmm.
That's that.
Okay.
The counter-racist codification is about, I call it, comparing to a basketball court. I say it's all net every time you touch the ball. No dribbling at all. That is absolutely prohibited on this team. No dribbling. Every time you touch the ball, anywhere on the court, it goes in the basket. And goes in the basket practically without touching the net. That takes a lot of practice, what people tell me. Every time you touch the ball, anywhere on the court, but that's the United Independent way. You always think on that type of scale. Your thinking is always on that scale. Now, how does that work in a practical sense? If you're at a meeting, anything that's got to be said by anybody is supposed to best be said by you. Otherwise, you don't speak at all. If you don't think that you got something to say better than everybody and 10,000 people in a stadium, keep your mouth shut.
Mm-hmm.
That's the United Independent way. Now, nobody tells you to keep your mouth shut, or you shouldn't put yourself in that position, because the code will cover that too. When do you keep your mouth shut? When you decide to. Okay?
Yes, sir.
And you should decide not to say anything if you can't say it better than anybody else. I've gone to many a meeting, and I follow the code religiously when I do that. I say, I'm not saying nothing to nobody about these issues until everybody who's got something to say says what they say, what they got to say. And then, even then, I might not can think of anything to say better than what I've heard. So what do? According to logic, according to counter-racist codification, I don't say nothing. Now, I've been to many meetings when I didn't say nothing. I was expected to say a whole lot. And people would have pointed that out. Said, Neely Fuller came to the meeting. He didn't open his mouth. That's because I couldn't say anything that was best said by somebody else.
Yes, sir. Okay.
I couldn't think of it. This is not about, well, I'm here, all eyes on me, I better say something. No, that's not the codified way. This is about problem solving. It's not about showing off your personality.
Yes, sir. Okay. All righty. Thank you, Mr. Fuller. Now, what I'm going to do is, James, I know you're on the line, so this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to have you and Mr. Fuller have a conversation, then I'm going to take a break. Well, I guess I'm going to take a break now. You're listening to the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr. I'm the co-host, Mr. Bobby. If you'd like to get in contact with the show, as RT has done, thank you, RT, in the remaining 30 minutes, just dial this number, 516-453-9921, and make sure you press the number 1 button so that you can be heard, okay? You can also join the chat room by going to blogtalkradio.com. You want to make sure that you click on where it says programs, and then you want to click the Produce Justice show, and then when you do that, the chat room becomes available, and you can get into that bad boy. And lastly, you can Gmail me at the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, at gmail.com. I will get it, and I will read it, as I have done several today, and hopefully I will continue to do that. All right. Oh, by the way, if you're a new caller, just tell the call screener, and hopefully we'll get you on before the usual suspects come into play. All right, let's go. James, thank you for calling back and being on. You're on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead with your question, sir. James? Okay, wait a minute. Okay. Boy, they're really doing it today. James, are you there? Okay. All right, let me try this one then. RT, been a couple of weeks. You're on.
Yes, Kurt. Can you hear me, sir?
Gotcha, sir. Go ahead, man.
This question is for you, Mr. Fuller. Somebody mentioned to me, they said the earth is big enough for everybody to have food, clothing, and shelter. So if that's the case, then why is it so many people who don't have food, clothing, and shelter and all the other things that they need?
The white supremacists, for one. That's the biggest one. They are supreme. Those white people who believe in white supremacy and who practice white supremacy are supreme over what people get and what people don't get. They're the usual suspects. You can line up everybody on the planet and say, who's causing all this? That's who you find after you thoroughly investigate everybody. That's who I've found. Now, I may have it incorrect, but I think I got it nailed. That's why I call them the usual suspects. Anything that happens that shouldn't happen, somebody's starving in Ethiopia, when you look behind the curtain, It's the usual suspect, just like I thought. The white supremacists sitting back there pulling the strings. They got all these puppets out there in front. All right? This is a puppeteer show. That's what the whole world is. And everybody accusing this one of that one, accusing that puppet of doing this, that puppet of doing that. We're all puppets, including the audience. Under the system of white supremacy, if you have color in your skin, we are all puppets. Nobody's exempt. And it's the white supremacists are to blame, correctly so, for anything that goes wrong, anything that's not correct, anything that can be corrected but isn't corrected. It's always the usual suspects according to the counter-racist code, the compensatory counter-racist code. That's what you use as the basis for your conclusions from your judgments. So, if somebody in Ethiopia or Philadelphia who is black is starving, the white supremacists are to blame, directly and indirectly. Nobody but them. Why? Because they're supreme, that's why. They took that position. Own it. Like they say, if you break it, you own it. Or if you own it and it gets broken, you own that too.
Yeah.
They own black people. So anything that black people do, look at the white supremacists. They're the usual suspects.
All righty. All right, thank you, Mr. Fuller. RT, thank you. It's been 3 weeks, man, but we finally got you in there. I'm happy you were persistent, my brother. All righty. All right, here we go. James, we're going to try you again. James in North Carolina, looks like you might be able to do it. Wait a minute, there we go. James, are you there?
Yes, sir.
There you go. Hi, James. Go ahead. Do your thing, man.
Good morning, gentlemen. Mr. Fuller, I'm looking in the revised, expanded edition of the Compensatory Counter-Racist Code book. On page 287, about 3/4 down the page, under explanation, it reads, according to basic counter-racist logic, as long as white supremacy exists, no non-white person who has had sexual intercourse with a white person, and no white person who has participated in the practice of white supremacy is justly qualified to oppose any non-incestuous, non-disease spreading, non-impregnating act of mutual and willful sexual intercourse between any two or more non-white persons. That seems to be very straightforward. However, I still need some clarification on that. If you could help me out, sir.
Page what?
287.
287.
That's a revised, expanded edition.
Yes. And where are you? Say.
Where it reads explanation about 3/4 of.
Oh,
the
according
yes,
to basic counter-racist logic, as long as
yes,
white supremacy exists, no non-white person who has had sexual intercourse with a white person, and no white person who has participated in the practice of white supremacy is justly qualified to oppose any non-incestuous, non-disease spreading, non-impregnating act of mutual and willful sexual intercourse between any two or more non-white persons.
Can I ask you a question regarding what you just read, sir?
Yes, sir. Go right ahead.
Okay. according to what we both read, are you suggesting that, for example, if a victim of white supremacy who is a male and has had sexual intercourse with a white person under the system of white supremacy, but has a daughter who has been having sex with 10 non-white males at one time, and he has a problem with that because of the fact that he has had sex with, for example, just one white female in the past, he's not justly qualified to tell her, I don't agree with what you're doing, if what she did was mutual and willful, non-incestuous, non-disease spreading, and non-impregnating.
Right. If you had sexual intercourse with a white person, you're not correctly qualified to criticize the sexual conduct of any two non-white people. If you are a non-white person, you're having sexual intercourse with a white person, you're not correctly qualified to pass judgment on non-white people who are having sexual intercourse with each other. You're having sexual intercourse with a white person. You're not correctly qualified. You can do it. To object to any non-white people who are having sexual intercourse with each other, you just leave that alone.
Okay, so going back to my example, even if a non-white male who has had sexual intercourse with just one white female, and they have a daughter that is participating in an orgy, herself and 10 black males, are you saying that that father, even if he's not criticizing, but just trying to give her constructive instruction about the proper way of engaging in sexual intercourse, because I don't think that would be the correct thing for a female to do, for different reasons that I won't go into. But because he had sex with just one white female, then he's not justly qualified to say anything to her about that. But if he had not had sex with a white female, he would be justly qualified.
Well, it just stands by what it says. Now, here's what? Application. Now, this applies to anything in the code book. Everything that is written in the code book is subject to the reader of any, like you've read that under Area 8, under sex, because I put it there. But it says at the beginning of the book, what? And always keep this in mind. If something doesn't apply to you or doesn't make sense to you, you don't adapt it. That's the United Independent thing. It's totally democratic. This textbook is more democratic than almost anything you'll find anywhere. It's not a dictatorship. You unite with logic, not the author of the book. It has nothing to do with Neely Fuller, really, even though Neely Fuller wrote it. It has to do with logic. And does it make sense? And will it work for you and not against you? Everything in all of these writings, and this is for everybody to hear, is questionable. You question it, just like you're doing now. And you're talking to the author of what you're reading. But the author of what you're reading is saying this, because this is in the book itself, in the introduction sections, and throughout the entire concept. That's why it's called United Independent. As an individual person, you're independent in making your decisions. Or I could have said individual. And it's always based on you being united, not with the author of a textbook for victims of white supremacy, or not with any so-called, quote-unquote, counter-racist organization. You unite with logic. And if it doesn't seem logical to you to follow this instruction or to utilize this information in the way it's presented, then bypass it under that umbrella. Doesn't make sense to me. Or I don't think that's constructive. I don't think that's that's going to produce a constructive result at all. Now, this doesn't just apply to that section of this book, because I think that's where the question might be. Is this something I have to do? If it doesn't make sense to you, absolutely not. If you don't think it's going to produce what? 2 words. And keep this in mind with anything that you read in the textbooks. A constructive result. If I follow this instruction, will it produce a constructive result? If I pass this on for somebody to do, is it going to produce a constructive result? It may not. And you think about that too. That's why part of the title of the textbook for victims of white supremacy is just that. Thought, speech, action. You don't act on nothing or repeat anything to someone else as a suggestion unless it makes sense to you.
Alrighty. Thank you, Mr. Fuller. James, thank you for calling. It's been a minute, maybe a couple of minutes, but thank you for calling. Missed you, but glad you're back on board. Alrighty. Mr. Fuller, I have let's see, going back to the chat room here. Going back to the Gmails here. This comes from Yusuf. Yusuf says this. Good morning, Mr. Fuller. First, I want to know if you are familiar with the term white passing. I ask this question because in the past, and maybe even in the present time, non-white people who had light or, quote, fair skin, even, end of quote, have chosen to sometimes function and conduct themselves as white people, usually to avoid being mistreated by white supremacists. In present day, we are starting to see white people / suspected white supremacists passing as non-white people, going as far as injecting themselves with chemicals to have color or become darker in complexion. Since Mr. Fuller always says to call people by the names and titles they want to be called, my question is, what is the codified way to deal with the issue of white people passing for non-white so we don't get confused? And then I have another question. But let's go with this one. First one. It says, what is the codified way to deal with the with the issue of white people passing for non-white so we don't get confused?
So that you're not confused, what the code says you do about that is reveal the truth if you know it. if you find out that a white person has injected some type of chemical, and they have done this, they have admitted they have done this, there are books that have been written about it, so that they darken their skin and pass for black or non-white, that is a subversive activity on the part of the white person who does it. And the way you handle that is to handle in any war, any subversive activity. That's what the person is doing. The person is, you might say, what people do, it comes under the umbrella of espionage or anything false. The white supremacists deal in all types of falsehood, false sex, false religion, pretense, pretending to be one thing when they're another, pretending to believe one thing and trying to get you to believe it when that's not the thing for anybody to believe.
Pretending.
The white supremacists do that. We're at war. So they put on camouflage.
Okay.
That comes under camouflage. They're hiding.
Okay.
All right? Hiding in plain sight, you might say.
Yes.
You can use that as a cliche term. That's what they're doing. You have an enemy agent. Why do that? Why try to fool somebody? Because you don't have the correct intent. That's why. So that's one of the worst things that a white person can do, is go around passing for black. Even to make a point. No, you make your point verbally or in print. In fact, you should point out, if you're a white person, any white person that you detect doing that. See, that's a white person. I know this person. And they went through this process. And they have this dark skin. That's not a non-white person. Because I know them. They're supposed, other white people who say they believe in justice, they're supposed to reveal them. Why? The person is being deceptive. And deception from a suspected white supremacist, I mean, that is the worst case scenario.
Yes, sir.
You don't deceive anybody if you're white.
When you first started to answer the question, I feel that you said it best when you said a subversive activity, and there was that first part of that word sub, and then you said hidden activity. Yeah, subversive. Okay, got it. Hope everybody else did too. Okay, and the second question is, he says, and since the truth is important, if a known white supremacist or a white person is passing for a non-white, should we go with the truth and interact and call them a white person, or respect the wish of the suspected white supremacist and interact and call them a non-white person? Thank you for taking my question.
No, you revealed to everybody that you found out that this person is passing for black. This person is well, you ask, and you can, if you know the person, and you can wait to get them somewhere and tell them if you're going to do it. Tell everybody that you are a white person passing for black. And you can ask the person, why are you doing it? See, that's another thing. It's always best when you're talking to white people not to make accusations of any kind. Ask questions. Don't don't make accusations. That's what white people are doing, many white people, in anger and breaking down communications and all like that under this CRT thing, under all this argument about being woke, whatever that means. But black people should ask, first of all, then I ask you questions about the race issue. And if the person says yes, why are you, or are you, that might be the first question, are you darkening your skin so that somebody will think that you are not white?
Mm-hmm.
Why do you want to do that? Do you want to do that? Since it looks like you did it, why did you do it? And then ask them about the wants. See, those questions about wants will fit any situation. Why do you want to do that? Put the answer and don't move to the second question before you've answered the first. And don't move to the third until you've answered the second, and on and on. I mean, just start off with, did you do that? Did you darken your skin? Did you do it deliberately? Because it might have been an accident of some type. You want to get all these facts of what the person did first. And then move to the second question. Oh, you did it deliberately. Okay, second question. Why did you do it? Third question. How did you do it? Or did you plan to do it? If you did it deliberately, you must have a plan. What was your plan for doing it? So you can have any kind of structured questions, as many as it takes, to get to what? To get to the truth about what the person is doing and why they're doing it. And then the fourth question, like I talked about in the first hour, these wants. What do you want the constructive result to be for what you did? Darken your skin. What do you expect the constructive result to be of you doing that? And wait for the answer, and don't break into the answer at no point. Wait until the person finishes, until you most likely will have another question.
Uh-huh.
If you're not satisfied with that final question, the fourth one.
Okay.
What I call and you can do that. You can find out who that person is and ask the person. Don't ask somebody else. Say, I'd like to talk to this person. Or have you talk to the person and ask these questions. And get answers, even if the answers are solid. Person might say, I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to answer those questions. Well, that person has answered you. You got your answer. I'm not going to answer you.
Mm-hmm.
That tells you something right there. It might tell you all you need to know.
Yes.
Oh, you're not going to answer. Okay. I'm going to act according to the code based on you not answering. Because your answer was an answer.
Because your answer was an answer.
That. You are now on the racist suspect list like forever. That's my answer to that.
All righty. Thank you, Mr. Fuller. We have about a couple of more minutes here. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to dedicate that to the book. So, Mr. Fuller, as we got about 4 minutes to go, let's talk about that book and how we can get it and all the information.
Yes, go to producejustice.com, and hopefully when you get the book, particularly the basic revised expanded edition and or the word guide, which is just an extension of the expanded edition, they're pretty expensive, and I know these are difficult times, but I think that the white supremacists have already stepped in. You can go to producejustice.com, and I would like for my sales to increase, even though I know it's very expensive, particularly if you get both books, because I would have hesitation about buying one of my books at that price myself if I didn't know what was in it. But I think they're not the best written book. A whole lot of books that are written better. But I think the mission of the book is something very important. I wouldn't be putting it out there. But I also think that those who can afford it, go to producejustice.com and get both volumes if you can, or get one, the basic revised edition. That's producejustice.com. And you'll see the description of the volumes up there. And I do want to say this in addition. If anybody has any information of somebody doing something they shouldn't be doing and interrupting the sales of these books because they have dropped off, I'm going to say that. And when that has happened before, it's usually the usual suspects, the white supremacists, who are interfering directly and indirectly, sometimes using black people, with what I'm trying to do. And I strongly suspect in the last 2 weeks that has suddenly happened again.
Again, yeah.
Yeah, see, so, it's the white supremacists. When that happens, it's usually the white supremacists, or if I go by the code, it's always the white supremacists, directly or indirectly, who interferes with something like what I'm doing. They don't usually do it up front. They don't say it. It's not, you're not going to see any mention of my book by them at all.
Oh, okay.
All right. They'll mention other people. Right. Go to producejustice.com.
Okay. Now, we don't have time to take this question, Mr. Fuller, but I'm going to have you at least think about it for next week. This is an anonymous question, but I guess it's coming from Washington, D.C. They wanted to know, did you hear about the event in this past weekend in D.C. called the Rally for Reparations, Intercourse, in which black people gathered to rally for reparations? If so or not, what do you think about this approach? Well, we don't really have time to do it this week, but I wanted to let that person know that I did get the question. So maybe you can think about that for next week's show about the rally for reparations in D.C., since you do live there, and, they want your thoughts and expressions on that. So we'll do that next week. Everybody else, hey, listen, thanks for listening. Mr. Fuller, thank you. All the questions, Gmails, everything. You have been fantastic. All the books, producejustice.com. And if you are messing up or stealing, we're going to find out about that, too. Mr. Fuller, last word.
That's the last word right now.
Okay. All righty. All right, thank you, Mr. Fuller. Thank you, everybody. Have a good week.